Hi, welcome to the Silent Avenger channel. If you're enjoying the content, please consider giving it a like and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Let's dive into today's story. My name's Mike, 40, married to Jennifer for 18 years. We have a 15-year-old daughter named Emily. I always thought I had a decent life, good job, nice house, family dinners on Sundays, the works. But everything shattered one Friday afternoon about 3 months ago. I'd been away on a 3-day business trip. The plan was to come back late Friday night, but I managed to wrap up early. I thought, why not surprise Jennifer and Emily? So I didn't tell them I was coming. I stopped at a little diner on the way home, grabbed a pie Jennifer loves, and even picked up a small gift for Emily, a pair of headphones she'd been hinting at. I don't know why, but I felt good that day, like I was really doing something special for my family. That feeling didn't last long. I parked a block away from the house, figured it would make the surprise even better. Walking up the driveway, I noticed Jennifer's car in the garage, so I knew she was home. Emily was probably upstairs, scrolling on her phone or listening to music like most teens do. I unlocked the door quietly, set the pie on the kitchen counter, and started heading upstairs, ready to call out, "Surprise! I'm home early." But I stopped dead halfway up. Voices. 2 of them. One was unmistakably Jennifer's, soft, breathless, almost laughing. The other? A man's voice. Younger. I froze, holding onto the railing as their words sank in. It wasn't small talk, it was intimate. My ears were ringing, and I swear for a second, I thought maybe I was hearing wrong. That's how much I trusted her. I should have barged in. I should have confronted them. But instead I kept walking, slowly and quietly, like some kind of ghost. I peeked into the bedroom. And there she was. My wife. The woman I've shared nearly 2 decades of my life with, tangled up in our sheets with some guy who couldn't have been older than 25. He looked like one of those gym rats, young, smug, cocky. He wasn't even trying to hide his face when he turned over and laughed about something she said. I don't even know how long I stood there. A minute? 2? I couldn't think straight, couldn't move, couldn't breathe. And that's when I heard music blaring from down the hall, Emily's room. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe I just needed to get out of there before I did something I'd regret, but I turned away from the bedroom and headed for my daughter. Her door was cracked open, and I immediately saw what I wasn't ready for. Emily on her bed, with some punk kid she wasn't supposed to be anywhere near. I recognized him too, one of those boys I'd told her a dozen times to stay away from. They weren't doing anything inappropriate, thank God. But the way she looked up at me? Defiant. Like I was the bad guy for catching her in the act. "Dad," she said, pulling her earbuds out. "What are you doing here?" I didn't answer. I couldn't. I just turned around, walked back downstairs, and sat at the kitchen table. My hands were shaking. I remember staring at the pie, the stupid headphones, thinking, what the hell just happened to my life? That's when Jennifer came down. Her hair was messy, and she looked flustered. She stopped cold when she saw me sitting there. "Mike," she started. I didn't let her finish. "Get him out of my house," I said quietly, my voice shaking. "Now." She tried to explain. Tried to say something about misunderstanding and loneliness. I didn't care. I just sat there, staring at my hands, while I heard that kid scramble out of my bedroom and out the back door. Jennifer started crying, saying we needed to talk, but I wasn't ready. Instead, I got up, grabbed a suitcase, and packed what I could. While I was in the bedroom, I noticed Emily standing at her door, arms crossed, glaring at me like I was the problem. That hurt more than I can explain. I thought my daughter would be on my side, but no, her mom had her wrapped around her finger. I didn't say much after that. I grabbed my bag, got in the car, and drove away. I don't even know if they were watching me leave. All I could think about was how everything I thought I knew was a lie. I felt like a fool, like the last person to figure it out. That was 3 months ago. I didn't go back. I didn't call Jennifer or Emily. I stayed with an old buddy for a while, got a lawyer, and filed for divorce. I cut Jennifer off from the joint accounts, told her through the lawyer she could explain herself in court. I didn't want to hear her lies. As for Emily, she didn't call me either. Not once. I figured she'd pick her mom's side. I mean, what kid wouldn't? But man, that stung. I thought I was done. I thought walking away would mean taking control of my life again. Turns out, Things were just getting started. After I left, everything was a blur for a while. I moved into a cheap rental apartment on the other side of town. Nothing fancy, just 4 walls and a bed. The silence was brutal at first. I'd go to work, come home, sit in front of the TV without even turning it on. I didn't know what to do with myself. Every part of my life had been tied to Jennifer and Emily for so long. Now it was just me. I didn't block Jennifer's number, but I might as well have. She called me a few times, left a handful of voicemails, all the same nonsense. Mike, we need to talk. This doesn't have to end this way. You're overreacting. Please just call me. Overreacting? As if catching her in our bed with someone half her age was just a minor mistake. I deleted every message without listening all the way through. My lawyer was handling everything, dividing the house, the assets, the accounts. Jennifer didn't have a job of her own, so her world was about to get a lot smaller. I wasn't spiteful about it, but I also wasn't going to make things easy for her. She didn't deserve my kindness, and for once in my life, I wasn't going to roll over and work things out. Then there was Emily. About a week after I left, I finally texted her. Nothing long, just, "Hey kiddo, hope you're okay. Let me know if you need anything." No response. Days went by, then a week. I tried again. "Emily, I love you. I'm here if you want to talk." Still nothing. I can't explain how that felt, like she was choosing Jennifer's side by default. I wanted to tell myself she was just a kid, that she didn't understand what was going on. But deep down, I knew Emily did understand. She was old enough to know right from wrong, and still, silence. At work, people started to notice something was off. My boss, Dan, pulled me aside one afternoon. "You okay, Mike?" he asked. "You've been distracted lately." I didn't want to get into it, but Dan and I go way back, so I gave him the short version. I caught Jennifer cheating. Left her. Filed for divorce. Dan just nodded. "Damn, man. I'm sorry. I had no idea." He paused, like he was trying to figure out the right words. "If you need some time, take it. Don't let this eat you alive." That night, I sat in my empty apartment staring at my phone. I kept scrolling through old photos, family vacations, birthdays, Emily's soccer games. It felt like looking at someone else's life. My chest felt tight. I was angry, at Jennifer, at Emily, even at myself for not seeing the signs sooner. I had spent years being the reliable husband and father. Where had that gotten me? But the anger, the sadness, they didn't fix anything. I decided to take Dan's advice. I started hitting the gym after work, even if it was just to clear my head. I reached out to old friends I hadn't talked to in years, guys who knew me before my life revolved around being a husband and dad. It wasn't much, but it helped. 2 weeks later, Emily finally reached out. It wasn't the heartfelt call I'd been hoping for, just a text. "Why did you leave, Dad? Mom said you're just mad and not thinking straight." That hit me like a punch to the gut. Jennifer was already spinning her lies. I sat there for an hour trying to figure out how to respond. Finally, I typed out, "I left because your mom broke our family, Em. I'm sorry you're stuck in the middle of this, but I had to do what's right for me. I love you. I hope you know that." Her reply came a few minutes later. "Whatever." That was it. One word. I put my phone down, swallowed the lump in my throat, and stared at the ceiling. Emily was hurting, I knew that, but so was I. I wasn't going to chase after her, not right now. I needed to get my life together first. If she wanted to act like a defiant teenager, fine, but she'd learn soon enough that life isn't so black and white. About a month after I left, the cracks in Jennifer's perfect little world started showing. It was a Friday afternoon when I got a call from my lawyer. He'd been in touch with Jennifer's attorney, and apparently, she wasn't happy with how things were going. "She's asking for more time to sort her finances out," he said. "She claims she's struggling." Struggling? That was rich coming from her. Jennifer had spent years living comfortably on my paycheck, shopping whenever she pleased, pretending to be the perfect suburban wife. Now that I'd cut her off, reality was hitting her like a freight train. She didn't have a job, didn't know how to budget, and couldn't rely on me to bail her out anymore. At first, I figured she'd bounce back. Jennifer was good at putting on a show, making people believe whatever she wanted. But then my neighbor, Steve, called me up out of nowhere. "Mike," he said, almost cautiously, "I don't want to stick my nose where it doesn't belong, but have you talked to Jennifer lately?" Nope, I replied, leaning back in my chair. Why? She had some guy at the house the other night, Steve continued. A different guy this time. Looked pretty heated when he left, too. I heard yelling. I didn't say anything for a second. Another guy? Already? My first instinct was anger, but I swallowed it down. I wasn't surprised. Jennifer was always the type to need someone around to validate her, to fill the silence. I don't know what to tell you, Steve, I finally said. That's not my circus anymore. He chuckled awkwardly. Fair enough. Just thought you should know. The thing is, Jennifer had spent years pretending she had it all together, but the truth was, she couldn't handle being alone. She'd always had someone to lean on, me, her friends, even Emily when she needed someone to manipulate. Now the facade was crumbling, and people were starting to see her for who she really was. I didn't respond to any of her messages, but they kept coming. The tone shifted, though. At first, it was anger and blame. You're abandoning us. I can't believe you're doing this. Then it turned to desperation. Mike, please. I made a mistake. I miss you. I didn't buy it for a second. Meanwhile, I started hearing bits and pieces about Emily. She'd been acting out, staying out later than usual, skipping some of her after-school commitments. A mutual friend told me Jennifer was struggling to keep Emily in line. That stung, because I'd always been the one to set the rules and make sure Emily stayed on the right path. Now with me gone, it sounded like Jennifer had no idea how to parent on her own. I wasn't sure whether to feel smug or sad about it. Probably a mix of both. Then one night, out of nowhere, Emily called me. Dad. Her voice was quiet, hesitant, like she wasn't sure if she even wanted to talk to me. Hey kiddo, I said softly. What's up? There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing, but she didn't say anything. You okay? I finally asked. I got into a fight with Mom, she muttered. She's so annoying. She keeps blaming me for everything, like it's my fault you're gone. I let that sit for a second. Jennifer blaming Emily? Figures. I'm sorry you're dealing with that, I said. But you know this isn't your fault, right? None of it. She didn't say anything for a while. Then quietly she asked, Why did you leave, Dad? You didn't even say goodbye. That hit me right in the chest. I took a deep breath. I didn't say goodbye because I didn't want you to see me like that, I admitted. I was angry, hurt. I didn't want you to get caught up in it. I thought maybe you'd reach out when you were ready. Emily didn't respond right away, but she didn't hang up either. That felt like a win. Finally, she sighed. I miss you, she said quietly. My throat felt tight, but I kept my voice steady. I miss you too, kiddo. I'm still here, okay? Whenever you're ready, we'll figure this out. We didn't talk long, but that phone call gave me hope. It was the first real crack in the wall Emily had put up between us, and I wasn't going to let it go to waste. As for Jennifer, her life was falling apart one piece at a time. The thing about people like her is they're great at playing the victim, but eventually, the truth catches up to them. And when it did, I wasn't going to be there to save her. A couple of weeks after that phone call, Emily texted me out of the blue. Can we get dinner? Just us. I stared at my phone for a minute, half expecting it to be some kind of setup, but I replied right away, of course. How about Friday night? When I pulled up to the house to pick her up, it felt strange being back in the driveway. For a second, I thought about knocking on the door, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. Emily came out quickly, a backpack slung over her shoulder, and slid into the passenger seat without saying much. Hey kiddo, I said, trying to sound normal. Hey Dad. She was quiet for the first few minutes of the drive, staring out the window, arms crossed like she was holding herself together. Finally, I broke the silence. How's school? I asked. Still hating biology? Emily smirked faintly. Yeah. Still hate it. We ended up at a little diner we used to go to when she was younger, nothing fancy, but it felt comfortable. She ordered a burger and fries, and for a while, we just talked about normal stuff. Her classes, her friends, her awful math teacher. It felt good. But as soon as we settled into that comfortable quiet, Emily blurted out, Mom says you're punishing her. Cutting her off and making everything worse. I put down my fork and looked at her. What do you think, Em? She shifted in her seat, biting her lip. I don't know. She says you're mad because of that guy, but, she keeps lying about everything. It was the first time Emily had said anything about Jennifer's behavior, and it caught me off guard. Listen, I said carefully. I left because I couldn't stay in a marriage where I wasn't respected. Your mom made her choices, not me. And yeah, I'm angry, but I'm not punishing anyone. I'm just done letting her take advantage of me. Emily poked at her fries, nodding slowly. I get it. She's just different now. Always mad. Always yelling at me. I wanted to tell her that her mom was falling apart, that this was what happened when people who relied on lies ran out of options. But Emily was still a kid, and I didn't want to throw Jennifer completely under the bus. Things are hard right now, I said instead. But you don't have to take the blame for it, okay? You're not responsible for her choices or mine. Emily didn't say anything, but she gave a small nod. It was the first time in weeks that she didn't look at me like the enemy. When I dropped her off, she lingered for a second before getting out of the car. Thanks for dinner, Dad. Anytime, kiddo. As I watched her head back inside, I knew this wasn't going to be easy. Emily had been caught in the middle of something she didn't ask for, but for the first time, I saw a glimpse of the kid I'd always known, the one I could still reach. Back at my apartment, I got a text from Jennifer later that night. What did you say to Emily? She's acting weird. I didn't reply. Jennifer could stew all she wanted. She was losing control, and she knew it. A few days after dinner with Emily, I got another message from her. Can you pick me up after school? Mom's driving me crazy. When I pulled up outside her school, Emily looked different. Not just tired, there was this quiet, worn-down look in her eyes, like she'd been holding back for too long. She threw her backpack in the back seat and climbed in with a sigh. What's going on? I asked as we started driving. She's losing it, Dad. Like seriously, Emily muttered. She's mad all the time. She freaked out yesterday because I didn't wash the dishes her way. And then this morning, she started crying because some credit card got declined. I gripped the steering wheel a little tighter. I knew Jennifer was struggling financially. My lawyer had mentioned her bills were stacking up, but hearing it from Emily hit differently. She's just so. Emily stopped herself, looking frustrated. I don't know. It's like everything's falling apart, and she's blaming me for all of it. I glanced at her. That's not fair to you, Em. I know, she said softly. It's like, she doesn't even care about me. She's too busy being mad at you and crying about her own problems. I pulled into a parking lot near a coffee shop and parked. Listen, Emily. I need you to understand something. None of this is your fault. Your mom's going through her own mess right now, and it's not on you to fix it. You're my kid, you deserve better than that. She didn't say anything, but her shoulders relaxed a little. You want to grab a coffee? I asked, trying to lighten the mood. She smirked faintly. Yeah, sure. As long as you're buying. A week later, Jennifer called me. I almost didn't answer, but something told me to pick up. Mike, she started, her voice tense, I need help. I leaned back in my chair. With what? I can't pay the bills, she snapped, like it was somehow my fault. The mortgage, the utilities, I can't keep up. You can't just leave me like this. I didn't leave you with nothing, Jennifer, I said calmly. You've had time to figure this out. Well, I haven't, okay? Her voice cracked. Mike, I don't know what to do. For a moment, I felt bad. 18 years together, and now she was on the other end of the line, falling apart. But then I thought about the guy in our bed, the lies, and everything she'd done to blow up our lives. That's not my problem anymore, I said firmly. Figure it out. You're punishing me, she yelled. I made a mistake, Mike. Is this really what you want, to see me fail? I didn't answer. I hung up. The texts that followed were a mess, anger, guilt, begging. I didn't reply to any of them. Jennifer was learning what life looked like when the safety net disappeared. I wasn't punishing her, I was just done saving her from herself. The next time Emily called, it wasn't to vent about Jennifer. This time, she had something else on her mind. Hey Dad. I got a job. I sat up on the couch. What? Really? Yeah. I could hear the pride in her voice. Part-time at the coffee shop near school. I figured, I need to start doing something for myself. I couldn't stop smiling. That's great, Em. I'm proud of you. Thanks, she mumbled. Mom freaked out when I told her. She said I don't need to work and that it's embarrassing. But I don't care. Of course Jennifer would turn it into a problem. She couldn't stand anything that might make her look bad. But Emily didn't sound upset, she sounded determined. It felt like something had clicked for her, like she was starting to see things differently. "That's your call, kiddo," I said. "It's your life, and I think it's a good step. If you need help balancing everything, just let me know." For the first time in weeks, Emily laughed. "You're going to turn into one of those embarrassing dads who comes in and orders coffee just to check on me, aren't you?" "No promises," I teased. "But I'll tip well." That weekend, Emily stayed at my place for the first time since everything fell apart. She showed up with her backpack and headphones, but when she walked in, her face fell. "This place is empty," she said, looking around. "It's temporary," I said, rubbing the back of my neck. "I wasn't exactly planning on starting over, you know." Emily nodded, dropping her bag by the couch. "It's okay. I like it better than home right now." She spent the night on the couch, and we ordered pizza. It wasn't much, but for the first time in a while, we felt like us again. We watched a dumb movie, and I even caught her smiling a couple of times. When I dropped her off the next day, she lingered in the car. "Dad." "Yeah. Thanks for letting me stay." "Any time, kiddo," I said. "You're always welcome here." She grabbed her bag and headed inside without another word, but I could tell something had shifted. Emily was starting to take responsibility, for herself, for her actions. She didn't need Jennifer's approval anymore, and she wasn't waiting for someone to swoop in and fix everything. Meanwhile, Jennifer's life kept unraveling. The house wasn't getting paid for, and word was spreading around town about why I left. I didn't ask for details, but it was clear people weren't buying Jennifer's version of the story anymore. Friends who used to flock to her were backing away. I didn't gloat, but I also didn't feel bad. She was reaping what she'd sown. Emily was the one I cared about. And slowly, I was starting to believe we could rebuild something real, even if everything else was gone. About a month after Emily's first stay at my place, I got a text from her late one evening. "Dad, can I come over? Mom's losing it again." I didn't even hesitate. "Of course. I'll come get you." When I pulled up, Emily was already outside, standing on the porch with her backpack and her arms wrapped tightly around herself. I could see Jennifer through the front window, pacing and yelling into her phone. She didn't even notice me. Emily got in the car without a word. She looked drained, like she hadn't slept in days. "What happened?" I asked gently. "Mom's been freaking out over money again. She found out the house is going into foreclosure." I blinked. "What?" "Yeah. She hasn't paid the mortgage in months, and now the bank's coming for it. She's blaming you, of course." Emily paused, staring out the window. "But I know it's not your fault, Dad. She can't keep anything together." Hearing that hit me in a strange way. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction. Jennifer had done this to herself. But mostly, I felt bad for Emily. She was in the middle of a mess she didn't deserve. "I'm sorry, kiddo," I said quietly. "You shouldn't have to deal with this." She shrugged. "It's not like I can fix it. I just didn't want to be there tonight." When we got to my place, Emily flopped onto the couch, exhausted. I let her be. I didn't push her to talk, didn't try to fix things. I just let her know she was safe. That was all I could do. The next morning, over breakfast, Emily spoke up. "Dad, if the house gets taken, what happens to Mom?" I set my coffee down and sighed. "I don't know, Em. That's up to her. I can't step in and fix this for her." Emily nodded, poking at her cereal. "It's just, I feel bad for her, even though I know I shouldn't. She doesn't deserve to be bailed out, but it's still hard to watch." "That's because you're a good person," I said. "But it's not your job to carry her problems. She has to face the consequences of her choices, just like anyone else." Emily thought about that for a minute, then nodded again. "Yeah, you're right." It wasn't a perfect moment, but it felt like progress. Emily was starting to see things clearly, who her mom really was, and how much she'd leaned on other people to keep her life from falling apart. A week later, I heard through the grapevine that Jennifer had been served notice to vacate the house. Word was spreading fast, and suddenly, the people who used to call Jennifer their friend weren't so eager to be around her anymore. She tried calling me that night, but I let it go to voicemail. The message was a mess, crying, rambling, a mix of anger and desperation. "Mike, I can't believe you're letting this happen. I've got nothing left, and you don't even care. You're just sitting back and watching me fail. What kind of man does that? I made one mistake, Mike. Just one. I deleted it without listening to the rest. It wasn't one mistake. It was a lifetime of choices that finally caught up with her. I didn't owe her a lifeline anymore. Emily, on the other hand, was starting to impress me. She'd been working at the coffee shop every afternoon and saving up her paychecks. One night, she even brought home groceries. Just basic stuff, but she looked so proud of herself when she unpacked the bags. I figured I'd help out, she said, grinning. You didn't have to do that, Em, I said, though I couldn't stop smiling. I know. But it feels good to actually do something, you know? A few weeks later, I got a call from an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me to answer. Mike, it's Carol. Carol was one of Jennifer's old friends, one of the ones I thought would stick by her no matter what. Hey, Carol. What's going on? She sighed. Listen, I know it's not my place, but you might want to check on Jennifer. She's not doing well. I leaned back in my chair, feeling that familiar mix of anger and pity. What do you mean? She's drinking a lot. She's been calling people, crying, saying she doesn't know what to do. A couple of us tried to help, but she just pushes everyone away. And Carol hesitated. Emily's been staying with friends a lot. I don't think she wants to be around it. Hearing that about Emily made my chest tighten. I thanked Carol and hung up, staring at the wall for a long time. Part of me wanted to ignore it. Jennifer's mess wasn't mine to clean up anymore. But Emily? She still needed me. That evening, I called Emily. She picked up right away. Hey, kiddo. How are you holding up? She didn't answer right away. I'm fine, she said, but her voice was shaky. Emily, I said gently, is everything okay with your mom? There was a pause, and then she broke. No, she whispered. She's a mess, Dad. She's drunk all the time, and she keeps yelling at me about stupid stuff. I don't even want to go home anymore. Hearing that broke me a little. You don't have to stay there, Em. You know you're always welcome here. Can I come over tonight? She asked quickly, almost like she thought I'd say no. Of course, I said. I'll pick you up. When Emily got in the car that night, she looked exhausted. She barely said a word until we were halfway back to my place. She cried for an hour yesterday because I told her I was going to work, Emily mumbled. She said I was abandoning her, like you did. I gripped the steering wheel, my jaw tight. That's not on you, Em. None of this is your fault. I know, she said quietly. But it doesn't feel like she's my mom anymore. She's just sad and angry all the time. I didn't know what to say, so I just reached over and gave her shoulder a squeeze. You're not alone, kiddo. I'm here. We'll figure this out together. She nodded, looking out the window. Thanks, Dad. That night, as Emily settled into my apartment again, I realized something. Jennifer's life was crumbling, but mine and Emily's? We were slowly starting to rebuild. And that was enough for me. A couple of days after Emily stayed over, she asked me to meet her after her shift at the coffee shop. I didn't think much of it at first, but when I pulled up, she was waiting outside with her backpack, arms crossed. Hey, Em, I said as she slid into the passenger seat. Everything okay? No, she muttered. I'm done, Dad. I can't live with her anymore. I looked over at her, startled. What happened? Emily sighed, staring at her hands. She was drunk again last night. I came home after work, and she started yelling about how I was choosing you over her. She even threw a glass at the wall. She shook her head, her voice small. I can't do it anymore. Hearing that made my blood boil. Jennifer's spiral was worse than I thought, and now Emily was caught in the middle of it. You want to stay with me for a while? I asked gently. Emily nodded quickly. Yeah. I need to get out of there. I packed some of my stuff, but I'll have to go back for the rest. All right, kiddo, I said, keeping my voice steady. You're always welcome with me. We'll figure the rest out later. That evening, we sat on the couch eating takeout, and Emily looked more relaxed than I'd seen her in weeks. I'm sorry I didn't talk to you sooner, she said quietly. I didn't know how to handle all this. I shook my head. Don't apologize. You've been dealing with a lot, Em. I'm just glad you're here now. She nodded, picking at her food. I think I want to get serious about school again, too. Maybe take on some extra classes so I can graduate early. I don't want to waste time anymore. Hearing that made me smile. I think that's a great idea. It felt like Emily was taking control of her life, one step at a time. I was proud of her, proud of how strong she was being, despite everything. The next day, I texted Jennifer to let her know Emily would be staying with me for a while. Her response came quickly. You turned her against me. You'll regret this, Mike. I didn't bother replying. Jennifer could say whatever she wanted, but the truth was catching up to her. Emily had made her choice, and I wasn't about to let Jennifer drag her down any further. That night, as Emily sat across from me at the dinner table, she smiled, a real, genuine smile. It was the first time in months I felt like we were going to be okay. It didn't take long for Jennifer to come knocking, literally. It was a Saturday afternoon. Emily was upstairs, finishing some homework, and I was watching a baseball game on TV when I heard loud banging on the front door. I opened it to find Jennifer standing there. She looked rough, messy hair, tired eyes, and a half-empty look about her I hadn't seen before. We need to talk, she said, pushing past me into the apartment before I could say anything. Jennifer, this isn't the time, I said, trying to stay calm. Emily's upstairs. Of course she is, she scoffed, spinning around to face me. You're turning her against me, Mike. You're poisoning her. I'm poisoning her? I repeated, staring at her. Jennifer, you're the one drinking yourself into a hole and blaming her for everything. She's staying here because she's tired of walking on eggshells around you. She flinched, but instead of backing down, her voice rose. You have no right to judge me. Do you know how hard it's been? Do you even care? Hard for you. I snapped. What about Emily? She's the one who's had to deal with this mess. You don't even see what you're doing to her. At that moment, Emily appeared at the top of the stairs. Mom, stop. Jennifer turned toward her, her face softening. Emily, sweetheart, come home. Please. No, Emily said firmly, her voice shaking. I'm staying with Dad. Jennifer's shoulders sagged, like Emily's words had knocked the wind out of her. I'm your mother, Emily. You don't get to just walk away from me. I didn't walk away, Mom. You did, Emily shot back. You're the one who pushed me away. Jennifer opened her mouth to say something, but no words came out. She looked at me one last time, her expression a mix of anger and defeat. You'll regret this, Mike, she said quietly before walking out and slamming the door behind her. Emily stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, then quietly headed back to her room. I sat down, exhaling slowly. Jennifer wasn't just unraveling anymore, she was free-falling. And the worst part? She didn't see it. That night, Emily sat with me on the couch, a blanket wrapped around her shoulders. She's not going to get better, is she? She asked quietly. I looked at her, wanting to say something reassuring, but I couldn't lie. Not unless she decides to help herself. Emily nodded, staring at the TV without really watching it. I hope she does. But I'm not going back. You don't have to, I said. Not until you're ready, if you're ever ready. She leaned her head on my shoulder, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like a dad again. Over the next few weeks, Emily started finding her rhythm. She'd get up early, work her shifts at the coffee shop, and then spend her evenings at the kitchen table doing homework. She didn't need reminders or pushing, she just did it. One night, I sat across from her while she worked through a tough math assignment. I watched her quietly for a minute, taking it in. You know, I said finally, you've been doing great lately. I'm proud of you. She looked up, surprised. For what? For everything, I said. You're showing up. You're working hard. You're making good choices. That's not easy after everything that's happened. Emily's face softened, and for a second, she looked like the little girl I used to carry on my shoulders at the park. Thanks, Dad, she said, almost shyly. Moments like that reminded me of what I'd almost lost. Jennifer, meanwhile, was running out of options. I heard from my lawyer that she'd missed another mortgage payment. The house, our house, was headed for foreclosure. I didn't say anything to Emily about it, but I knew she'd find out soon enough. One day, Emily came home from school looking tense. Mom called me today, she said, dropping her bag by the door. I tensed up. What did she want? She said the house might be gone soon. She tried to guilt me into coming back. Emily looked at me, frustrated. She said it's my fault because I abandoned her. I took a deep breath, keeping my voice calm. Emily, you know that's not true, right? None of this is on you. I know, she said, though her voice was shaky. It's just, I hate hearing her like that. I want her to get better, but I can't fix her. I walked over and rested a hand on her shoulder. You're not supposed to fix her, kiddo. That's not your job. Emily nodded, wiping at her eyes quickly. I wish she'd just figure it out. I know, I said quietly. Me too. Later that night, Emily came and sat on the couch next to me. Do you think Mom's going to be okay? I didn't know how to answer that. I hope so, I said. But it's up to her. Emily pulled her knees up to her chest and stared at the floor. I think I'm finally getting it, you know? That sometimes people don't change, no matter how much you want them to. Hearing her say that hurt. No kid should have to learn that lesson so young. Maybe, I said gently. But the important thing is that you're changing. You're growing into someone I'm really proud of, Em. That's what matters. She leaned her head on my shoulder and let out a small, tired sigh. Thanks, Dad. We sat there for a while, just the two of us, with nothing but the hum of the TV in the background. And for the first time in months, I felt like things were going to be okay, at least for her. It wasn't long after the house was repossessed that Jennifer hit rock bottom. I didn't see it firsthand, but I heard about it through Carol again. She's out of options, Mike, Carol told me over the phone. No house, no savings. Nobody's helping her anymore. She's been burning bridges left and right. I stayed quiet for a second. Where is she now? She's staying at some rundown motel, Carol said. Honestly, she's not in good shape. I thought you should know. I thanked her and hung up, sitting there for a moment in the quiet of my apartment. Part of me felt a pang of pity. Jennifer had done this to herself, no question, but seeing someone you once loved fall apart like that? It's not easy. Emily found out a couple of days later. She'd overheard some kids at school talking about her mom staying in a motel. I found her sitting on the couch when I came home, knees pulled to her chest. Is it true? She asked quietly. Is Mom living in a motel now? I sat down next to her. Yeah, she is. Emily was silent for a moment. It's so weird, she said finally. She used to act like she was better than everyone else. And now this. I didn't know what to say, so I just put an arm around her. I feel bad for her, Emily admitted, her voice small. But I don't think I want to see her. Not yet. That's okay, I said softly. You don't owe her anything right now. Take your time. Emily leaned against me, and we sat there in the quiet for a while. Jennifer had finally reached the bottom. Whether she'd get back up, that was on her. But Emily and we were still moving forward. A couple of weeks passed with no word from Jennifer, and I think we were both grateful for the silence. Emily had settled into a routine, work, school, home. She'd even started talking about applying to some local colleges. One evening we were eating dinner, just spaghetti and garlic bread, when Emily suddenly said, Dad, I think I want to get my own car. I blinked. Your own car? Yeah, she said, pushing her fork around. I've been saving from work. It doesn't have to be anything fancy, just something I can drive myself to school and work with. You wouldn't have to keep picking me up all the time. Hearing her say that hit me in a way I didn't expect. She wasn't asking me to buy her a car, she was figuring it out herself. You've been saving up? I asked. Emily nodded. I have about $1,200 so far. I've been looking at some used cars online. Maybe you could help me check them out. I couldn't help but smile. Of course I'll help. That's a big deal, kiddo. She shrugged, trying to play it cool, but I could tell she was proud of herself. And I was proud of her too. Over the next week, we spent a couple of evenings scrolling through car listings. Emily made it clear that she didn't want me to pay for it. This was her thing. You can't help with just a little? I teased one night as we sat on the couch. Emily smirked. Maybe a little. But I'm buying most of it. When she finally found a decent used car, a beat-up but reliable sedan for $2,000, I chipped in the extra $800. Consider it a small reward for being the hardest working kid I know, I told her. The day we went to pick up the car, Emily grinned the whole ride home. I can't believe it, she said, gripping the steering wheel like it was made of gold. It's mine. I actually did it. You earned it, I said. This is all you. She looked over at me, smiling softly. Thanks, Dad. For everything. At that moment, I felt something shift. Emily wasn't just rebuilding herself. She was thriving. After everything we'd been through, she was becoming someone strong, responsible, and independent. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't just feel like we were surviving. I felt like we were winning. I should have known Jennifer wouldn't stay quiet forever. It had been weeks since Emily got her car and things were finally feeling normal. Then, out of nowhere, I got a call from Jennifer. "Mike," she started, her voice shaky. "I'm trying to fix things. I started counseling." I sat there, stunned for a second. "Counseling?" "Yeah." She let out a weak laugh. "You probably don't believe me, but I'm trying, okay? I miss Emily. I just want to see her. Please." I exhaled slowly, rubbing my temple. "That's not up to me, Jennifer. You'll have to talk to Emily yourself." "I've tried," she snapped, her voice breaking. "She won't answer my calls. Can you blame her?" I shot back. "You need to show her you're serious. Words aren't enough anymore." Jennifer went quiet. "Just tell her I'm trying," she said quietly. "Please." That night, I told Emily about the call. "She says she's in counseling," I said. "Says she wants to see you." Emily didn't say anything at first, just sat there staring at the floor. "I don't know, Dad," she muttered finally. "I don't trust her. What if she's just lying again?" "That's up to you to decide, kiddo," I said gently. "You don't owe her anything. If you're not ready, that's okay." Emily looked up at me, her expression torn. "What if she's actually trying this time? What if I don't give her a chance and she really does get better?" I sighed, leaning forward. "It's not about giving her one big chance, Em. It's about seeing if she's willing to earn your trust back. It's okay to take it slow." She nodded, chewing on her bottom lip. "I'll think about it." A few days later, Emily made her choice. We were sitting on the couch when she said, "I'll meet her. Just once. Somewhere public. I want to see if she's actually changing." "Are you sure?" I asked. She nodded firmly. "Yeah. But you're coming with me." "Deal," I said. Emily set the terms. She would meet Jennifer at a coffee shop, neutral ground, no arguments. I could tell she was nervous, but I was proud of her for being strong enough to face it head-on. The day of the meeting, Jennifer looked better than I'd seen her in months, still tired, but more put together. She sat quietly, hands wrapped around her coffee cup as Emily spoke first. "I don't know if I can forgive you," Emily said, her voice steady. "But I'm here to see if you're actually serious about changing." Jennifer's eyes filled with tears, and for the first time, she didn't try to blame anyone else. "I'm so sorry, Emily," she whispered. "I know I hurt you. I'm trying to get better, for me, for you. I hope one day you can believe that." Emily didn't answer right away, but she didn't leave either. She just nodded, taking it all in. And in that moment, I realized something. This wasn't about Jennifer anymore. It was about Emily, her strength, her courage, and the person she was becoming. Whatever happened next, she was going to be okay. After the meeting with Jennifer, things settled down. Emily didn't say much about it, but she seemed lighter, like she'd finally let go of something. One night, we sat on the couch watching an old movie when Emily turned to me. "I think I'm ready to move on, Dad. From all of it." I smiled at her. "I'm proud of you, Em." "Thanks," she said softly. "I'm proud of us too." And that was it. No big speeches, no dramatic endings, just peace. Emily was growing into someone strong and responsible, and I'd found my footing again. For the first time in a long time, we were okay. Sometimes, moving on is the best thing you can do. And we did it, together.